And we're just trying to bring you guys with us.
Yes. Prizes. What? Exclusive to CES.
What's up, guys? BBT Carter here. Got BBT Nick over here. We're finishing up this rig here. We got most of it completed. We want to take you guys through what it took to get some of these cards going. Working with AMD, you have to usually go through a couple different BIOSes for even the same card sometimes to get everything to work functionally. We want to take you guys through that process. Welcome back, everybody. How's it going? Going live on YouTube. It's been a minute for YouTube. It's been a minute in general. I haven't had a stream in about a month and a half, and thought, after watching a lot of the discussion that's going on Twitter in the space when it comes to Ethereum and the decision around PROGPOW, and looking at both sides of the take, I thought what a better time to come back and talk through kind of what the bottom line on this is, what some of the detail. I have 3 pages of notes on all of this that we're going to walk through, breaking down the side, pitching on behalf of the GPUs, but also understanding some of the concerns and trying to answer some of those concerns from the community. From a lot of the telemetry I get from folks on, some of their concerns with changing an algorithm this far down with an already kind of forecasted move to proof of stake. How and why would somebody want to do this? And let's get into the discussion, and then I'll have a section for question and answers for folks. And again, this isn't just a one-time thing. We'll continue this. There's a lot of testing that still needs to be done on testnet and stuff with some of the newer GPUs and stuff, and I want to get into that too. But let's go ahead and start this conversation. I'm not going to be watching the chat right away. I'm going to go through this to give you guys kind of an understanding of where we're going to go through it. I'm going to go through this, and then we'll have a section for question and answers. As you're going through, if you're finding questions on things, like write them down, hold them to the side, and then ask them when we get into the question and answer. I know some things might come up. So let's get into this. So bottom line up front, what is the point of this live stream? Well, the point of this live stream is to understand what PROGPOW is, why has it been selected for the second time to go live on Ethereum, and why is there a lot of contention around it. And for the folks that don't know, so I'm going to explain what it is. In the most simplest terms, it's a proposed algorithm change to Ethereum. It's also an algorithm that could be used for other coins and is used for other coins. It's considered It's considered contentious because there's not really a consensus around the opinions, which when you view the online collective, blogs, Medium post, Twitter, to change the algorithm. So it's not that it's contentious that it'll create a hard fork and split the currency. It's contentious in the context that a lot of the people that are creating a lot of the questions around it are concerned because some of the larger voices in Ethereum community doesn't see the point in it, right? So it creates this contention in the space around that. Why am I discussing this right now? Was this old news, right? This was a year and a half of discussion for PROGPOW, and a lot of people thought this went away, and then it was brought up and saying, hey, we may look at bringing this forward into a future release. This was the second approval established on the core dev meeting number 81 on February 21st. That's why we're talking about this discussion right now. The implementation is tentatively scheduled for July, roughly 3 weeks after EIP 1962. So there's an update. EIP, for people that don't track that, is an Ethereum improvement plan. Bitcoin has the same kind of thing. It's Bitcoin improvement plan, BIPs. So that's just a way, it's like a category that keeps a sub list of content in there. So 1962 is bringing a whole bunch of elliptical curve, mathematical contexts and changes to Ethereum, updates that allow certain calculation functions to occur, basic arithmetic stuff, and some complex arithmetic stuff. And then this is bundled and packaged as a possible 3 weeks after that release. I will link below the conversation that Ethereum had on the ETH dev meeting that I'm talking about, that core dev meeting. The PROGPOW discussion starts about 1 hour and 33 minutes into a 2-hour meeting. So just to kind of give you a point in there, the proposal was to split the Berlin update, which is EIP 1962, and PROGPOW as kind of 2 separate events. There was also the really 2 key takeaways on this. So there's been a couple testnets for PROGPOW. So I'm kind of giving you some of the background first, and then we'll get into the stuff that gets people fired up. Key takeaways: 0.9.3 mining testnet has been live. It's been tested. It will continue to be tested.
and the EIP was discussed about splitting it into two separations that would activate after like 3 weeks. So essentially they could bundle it for the exchanges and everybody could prep for it and then just flag for it to activate after a certain period of time. So it wasn't just shoving an update down people's throat, and it's really a separation of like, I have this one EIP that's going to have all this stuff in it, and I want to validate over a period of time that everything's good with that. If I bundle both together, now I'm kind of tracking, is PROGPOW and this balling each other up? So it makes sense when people separate kind of big releases. So I'm not too concerned about that kind of thing, and it does make sense to kind of separate some things. I mean, I'm all about agile and quick releases, but having a split like that is okay. The proposed, as I said before, the proposed release also would have a switch to enable or quote unquote disable for exchanges and clients to upgrade. So they would essentially flag for a particular block and then it would just activate, just like it's done on the testnet a couple times that we've shown. Discussion led to action from the dev team to reach out to the largest folks against PROGPOW. The Gnosis founder, Martin Kopelman, I may be saying that wrong, and Spank Chain's CEO, Amin Salamani, they were kind of the loudest voices on this, and there's a question to go back out to them to make sure that they wouldn't be pushing for a chain split. Real quick sidebar for people that are not tracking the way upgrades happen on blockchains in general. This is not specific to just Ethereum, it's to any blockchain that's going to do a hard fork. Hard forks means that some level of change is occurring that is adding some new content that did not exist. So for the clients and everything to accept that, exchanges, nodes, everything that's part of that capacity, part of that blockchain needs to accept that change to have those changes. That is essentially a hard fork. It's like a software release at the end of the day. It's not to be confused with chain splits. Chain splits is when you have people that say, I'm gonna mine the original chain, and it's going to cause a fork of the chain. So you now have a copy of both because you're going to have people mining on one side and mining on the other side, and now you have a chain split. Not all hard forks result in that. Contentious ones can if you have parties on both sides that have mining power that will split that chain. So just a little sidebar there. James Hancock, that was on the call, put his name in position up that he felt that there would not be a chain split, and that most of the concern was just a concern. It wasn't that people were really taking a hard position that they would try to lobby miners and folks to not activate for PROGPOW. So he was going to take that back to the community and just make sure, like, hey, do you have a group of miners that you're talking to that really want to keep it to eTash? And is it going to chain split or not? So that right now is supposedly an activity that's going on right now. Now, since the very first discussions of PROGPOW, there's been an active range of community involvement, establishing some semblance around a decision if not PROGPOW, Ethereum would change eTash or not. In English, people have been discussing for a while about changing the algorithm. If it was SHA-3, where ETC is going, or any other. There's just been a discussion around the change of an algorithm. This has been done through coin votes, carbon votes, miner and pool signaling, to where you take Ethereum that you own, you sign it within a smart contract that you agree to one side or the other, which the pro of that, it's using a democracy style voting of staking your Ethereum and saying, hey, this is, I have at least some weight or some skin in the game, and I vote this particular way. Your keys, your signature kind of thing. The downside of that, ironically, using actual votes to do something like that, like if you own a cryptocurrency, is that you created an environment where the largest stakeholders can really weigh that decision, right? So in this case, like for the carbon vote, and I'm actually not countering the fact that, and by the way, it was like 95% said yes to go PROGPOW. I'm taking it with a bit of caution, which I think everybody should when it comes to voting. And it actually is a good use case to test out, like, how much weight is a vote if somebody has a lot of Ethereum. of like, if you're a rich person with Ethereum, then you can really swing a vote if it's purely based on that. Versus just saying I have an address and I've signed it without any Ethereum, and then you could still kind of game that, right? But it's still, I think the game theory of that, walking through that ideology, is pretty interesting. The coin vote had 3.1 million that participated worth of Ethereum. 2.9 million said yes. 200,000 said no. This also was a miner hash rate that's been consistently 100%, like most of the mining pools that are out there. I'll put these links below to those various voting things where you guys can see, and take it with a grain. I mean, it is as mechanical as you can possibly define as what blockchain and the tech brings, right? With ability to digitally sign with your keys a position and validate with that certificate that you have as that signing key to that particular wallet with that particular Ethereum in there. It is about as qualifying of a proof of a use case for a blockchain and voting as it gets. However, again, it's done to those issues that I was talking about. If you have a lot of it, you can create this kind of situation, which, sidebar, we'll have a whole separate discussion of, is this an early indication of what proof of stake would look like if you have block producers and you have huge amounts of, influence on a network, and how is that going to, how is that decentralized, and how is that not taking a community voice? We'll put a pin in that one. So at the end of the day, why does it matter to a GPU miner? I posted this on Twitter to try to break down, as I sat here and thought to myself, being a miner since 2011, being in this space and contributing to several different networks in the space, I try to break down the essence of what the argument is in general. Let's take a very simple angle on this to understand that it's easy to rationalize why individuals in this world care about proof of work mining. At the most fundamental level, it's the ability to participate. The ability for you to discover cryptocurrency in whatever chain, read up on it a little bit, and say, you know what? I own a graphics card. I own a computer. And there's this software I can run that I can start to participate and learn and understand. Maybe you're not a developer, but you do have a sunk cost in hardware, and you can actually participate in something and get rewarded for that participation and secure the network at that same time. That its most fundamental level, even before you get into ASICs and FPGAs, you could do the same thing there. But from somebody that's just outside looking in, that they already have maybe a sunk cost in investment, they can participate. There's no real argument or discussion around the availability of GPUs and CPUs. They're everywhere on this planet. You can have access to a computer, you can have access to run a proof of work mining solution on your computer and then get compensated. And we can get into profitabilities and all those other things, but it's a simple fact that if they want to participate, they can. The counter argument may go the way of, well, ultimately it comes down to profitability, and it doesn't counter the situation around centralization of mining, like centralization of GPUs, like where you'd have one company buying a whole bunch of GPUs. That is only true when the equilibrium of profitability is near the world average cost of operations versus the price of the coin. So like right now, where prices are very low after being very high, you have a natural equilibrium that occurs. You have a fixed cost for maybe your facility, you have probably a fixed cost on your power, you have a variable cost maybe on some of the expenses you can drop off, but bottom line, you will get to the most efficient as you possibly can in your particular situation. Some people drop off, some people look for other places to get more efficient, and this goes either way from any kind of centralization of mining in general. However, the profit opportunity in times of speculative rise, so take that and understand, in the times of speculative rise, which has happened 3 times in cryptocurrency, the profit opportunity lets loose for more folks to participate. More will have a natural incentive to join the network during these events. In 2017, more people entered this space than ever, and they were mining Ethereum by and large. More people were able to participate because they could go right out to Best Buy, they could go out to the different stores around, watch a few videos by some of us that are in this space and join and participate and talk to their friends and explain and educate in this space. If you have a world where everything is in ASICs and FPGAs, it's only about the price. It's about what it's doing in the action-wise, because your limited participation is controlled by a larger conglomerate that controls the supply chain around those FPGAs, which are bits that have the bit streams that run that, and the ASICs. It's not that they're evil. It's that the mechanisms around it have been devised to ensure a level of consistency. And yes, they get the meteoric rise of their profitability when those events happen too, but not everybody can participate. And some of the largest scams in like Bitcoin history when it comes to the mining side happen during those events where people are getting secondary hardware, where the mining companies, like bad behavior occurs in that. Bad behavior, EVGA on a graphics card does not care. Their main customer is gaming. The whole argument here is that anybody can participate. Anybody can become part of this space when you have something like that. And yes, why the time right now maybe not the best for everybody to jump in. It's just watching the numbers, looking at where it might make sense, looking where you can find a couple of good deals on GPUs here and there, and then be able to participate when you have that rise. This includes other folks, such as folks that have sunk costs. There's a lot of mining rigs turned off right now because the mining market came a lot more down, and you have maybe rising costs on your power costs, and it doesn't make sense for you to mine right now. But in those times of speculative rise, you have times of diversity when people are starting to move money into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. You have that sunk cost that you can now turn back on. That is your hedge. That is your leverage in this space if you're a miner. The hedge and the leverage on ASICs are far less than these GPUs that actually hold value. I mean, some of these GPUs I still have, the RX 470s and such, still hold some level of value right now. Maybe purchased at $220, maybe worth $60 right now. But in a time of great rise and low supply, as people start to pull on that and wane on that supply chain from the retail side, they also tend to go up in value. Again, it reinforces a simple principle with the ability to participate. Bottom line, that anybody can join. There are active Twitter polls, and people have signed up against PROGPOW, which is totally fine. Some may have their specific reason, but I would venture most that are having an issue with it are just genuinely concerned because a few known developers had voiced their particular concern, which makes them concerned. Nothing more, nothing less on their issues. There's no some deep-seated issue under an algorithm change. Algorithm change happens all the time on different cryptocurrencies. Now, I don't want to diminish their concern. I believe that enough folks voicing concern creates a transmission that will reinforce their position at the end of the day. Let me say that slowly. A transmission is a concern and can sometimes construct to a particular position that somebody will reinforce to. The biggest risk of accepting an algorithm change, or any hard fork for that matter, is a challenge to the chain, which ultimately could split the currency into two chains, one Ethash and one PROGPOW. Contentious hard forks do not necessarily equal chain splits though, unless miners choose to mine both sides, like in the case of Ethereum Classic with the DAO. So the DAO hack, some folks did not want to ever back up a chain. It's kind of the antichrist of a blockchain, right? To roll it back and immutable. So Ethereum Classic was created from that. The signal to noise ratio that I see coming from the mining community is not to split the currency. Actually, I haven't seen any miners come out and say, we're going to mine Ethash. I haven't seen anybody involved in mining in general. If that's the third-party vendors like CUDA Miner or any of those, the node operators, anybody that's involved with the mining aspect in general, have came up and said that they're going to split the chain. I have not seen that. Somebody please forward that to me if they have. I want to see their concern. The contention risk really is coming from the dApp community. So the developer community that builds the decentralized applications on Ethereum, voicing their concern that the effort is taking away from their other development, and that the particular algorithm may lead to a competitive advantage from one GPU to another. So it's really kind of two things. You got developers that are making applications, and then you got kind of this other concern that you're going to pit one GPU vendor versus another, and you're going to create this kind of imbalance or equality. I'll address each concern separately. The mining algorithm and the chain security inherent of proof of work is fundamentally with respect to dApps is not changing. Like it's an infrastructure. This is equivalent to essential. I'll put my cloud architect, my day job context in this, where my background has a lot to do with, I'm a solution architect by trade. So I'll take this in a native discussion. It's like changing out the mechanism within the IaaS, the infrastructure as a service, equivalent to changing out like an SSL cert. Like swapping out a DV-SSL cert, so the domain certificate. It's not even moving from a change to like a DV-SSL to like an EV, an extended one. It's not changing even the substructure. It's just literally just changing the algorithm. It's a SSL certificate in that aspect. It really, at the end of the day, does not, with the main rules of the chain, the block time, any of the main components of the chain are not changing to make that adjustment. So the PaaS and the SaaS in that world, the platform as a service and the software as a service, i.e. dApps in that capacity, are just inheriting the fact that the infrastructure just changed algorithms. One of the research aspects early on the dev calls was to estimate the level of effort on how it would result and impact the development efforts that are afoot with other EIPs. And that overwhelmingly was a low impact to everybody. Bottom line, some other developers took the action to help testnet get set up, for miners to get created, and for testing to occur, including a full PROGPOW audit. Again, did not affect any developers that were working on other EIPs or ETH 2.0, Path, or any of that. Multiple testnets are also launched, 0.9.2 and 0.9.3, that spec standards, which had some adjustments and changes after a few iterations through dev meetings, that were tested and even showing how it would activate on testnet, on the mainnet without issues. Number two, the mining advantages around one GPU company versus another. AMD versus Intel, or AMD versus Nvidia. To test this assertion, I spent over 200 hours of live stream time on Twitch testing nearly 68 different GPUs across AMD and Nvidia. So GPUs I have here over about 200 hours across like 35 different live streams over like a 4-month period. Most of you guys were able to watch me on Twitch and live during that. I put all the results on a Google spreadsheet, essentially on those live streams, and then made quick recap videos for the folks that have low attention spans and just want the quick and dirty on what the results were. The advantages shows that Nvidia, the results showed that the advantages was switching over to Nvidia at the time. But this was not due to a programmatic rationale within the algorithm, but due to the GPU architecture. I.e., you could validate and show that when you change an algorithm to take take an aspect of the GPU in the way that PROGPOW did, it was enhanced to take on the effects of what the best output of a GPU could be. I.e., you would have a situation where, such in games, such in scientific applications, such in raw computational jobs, that an Nvidia GPU just outright performed an AMD. Surprise, surprise. Every other zone and type of test outside of cryptocurrency could validate those same type of responses, to where the 10 series AMD or the 10 series Nvidia cards were just outright faster than the AMD counterparts. That is true in every other aspect. Nothing had to do with PROGPOW. This just happens to do with the architecture of the GPU at a core level. The ironic part about the position in general was that the current F hash for a long time was overwhelmingly generous on the AMD side. So for years, AMD's architecture, memory controller, timings related to the IO bound nature of F hash took advantage and actually outperformed all the 8 and 9 series Nvidia cards. The 750 Ti did show a little bit of promise there. Not until the 10 series did it close the gap and put a position as more of a reigning champion on F-hash also. First with the 1060 really showed, the GTX 1060 really showing the advantages there. And now the current 1650 Ti is showing a real good advantage. AMD has since made up that ground to Nvidia with its Navi architecture and becoming one of the best cost to power to F-hash performance over any of the Nvidia cards. Not necessarily to use and buy right now to get on in the current because of the profitability aspect, but when you're talking computational versus power versus output, Navi's really closed the gap. Computationally for the money, AMD is beating out Nvidia in almost every category except the high-end, ultra high-end right now. Nvidia reigns supreme with the RTX Titan and the RTX 2080 Ti respectively, but that's like pitting a supercar in way of price and performance. Bottom line, there's no argument around the GPU company's issue right now. Navi's essentially closed that argument. Retooling to, and bottom line, a lot of even the farm that I have and that BBT Todd has and folks that I talk to regularly have been retooling this entire time too, that are in this for the long game. GTX 1650s, are the 5600 XTs, the 5700 XTs, really starting to switch out the farms anyways. The other large acquisitions come from the scope of cost transference from being able to buy cheaper mining cards right now, such as the mining edition cards that are going out, which are the tried and true RX 470s and 480s from Sapphire, which are like $20 to $50 right now, which means if other people wanted to participate, they wouldn't have to go out and buy brand new cards. There is a plethora of cards that are out there, and PROGPOW allows those cards at 4 gigs to remain operational. Finally, this brings us to the previous discussion around the angst around changing algorithms. Most of the concern is based on general understanding on actually how mining incentives work, and do not go much past the limited assumptions and untested game theories. Now that I've covered most of the mining view, let's look at the basic situation. And then I'll kind of do a little monologue after this. This is kind of my scripted one. Nobody likes the game changes. So here, let me reset this. Because when I was writing this was a lot more personal to the way I view in just general. And it's actually counter to any kind of algorithm changes, to be honest with you. Nobody likes game change rules mid-course. There was a path for Ethereum. We all understood since September of 2015 that ETH was going to go proof of stake. ETH hasn't went proof of stake. And it's nothing against them. I'm not even taking shots at Ethereum. Things were discovered. Like mistakes, some mistakes were made, but most of the ideology and understanding and watching other algorithms go down the proof of stake line in different ways. Things were discovered, right? So it's not there yet. So F-hash had an expiration period as far as mining was concerned. Even people buying into 2017, it was told very often that, hey, this might go away, right? But there was a rule set. There was a timeline that people adhered to. If Bitcoin has taught us anything in that industry is that people will build and reinforce the rules loud and clear if there's a level of confidence that exists. And I would say that happens when you have something like Ethereum that's changed the amount of currency, the amount of, the going from 5 to 3 to 2 on the issuance, change in, having game theory around that entire concept, having rule changes with possibly not changing the algorithm. When you have things that are baked in and are changing, it just creates this angst, right, in the community that's upholding your coin, is what it comes down to, bottom line. So getting out of that is probably a good thing if they look forward and just look at enhancing the core applications within, or the core structures within Ethereum, and just set the rules for mining for people to align to. The current F-hash ASICs, so I'll give point 2. Current F-hash ASICs, by and large, are gonna fall off the network right now because they were hard-coded machines, just like if you bought an RX 470 with 4 gigs. The Antminer, was it E3 from Bitmain, has 4 gigs of RAM on it. It's gonna fall off in April, where it's no longer able to be using F-hash. The A10 from Inicillin is we're still trying to find out. I sent out a tweet on it to figure out how much RAM it actually has on it. It looks like it only has 4 gigs of DDR6. We'll find out. I'll get an actual factual output of that and post it to everybody once we find out. So bottom line, it does pose a question for people to say, would we actually change the algorithm or not? Why should we change the algorithm if the existential threat of the 2 main ASICs that are on the network right now are going to fall off naturally because the design patterns that were used when they fabricated the design, they did not take in effect that the DAG file would exceed 4 gig. Like they probably figured it would be end of life before that would occur. And this is also for ETC, so ETC still F-hash too. And with ETH really pushing to ETH 2.0 is the chances of an ASIC vendor wanting to actually build on to Ethereum still there. I believe that's all driven based on profit. If ETH tomorrow went to $700, I guarantee you somebody would be in a boardroom that morning looking to build an ASIC. That's just the way things are with that, if it kept with F-hash. But what I would submit, and some of those, so we know, so that I'm putting some confusion there. I'm putting some question, like should ETH, and should everybody flag for F-hash to go away if all the ASICs are going to fall off anyways? We'll just continue to mine F-hash. What I would submit is that proof of work continues on F-hash. The epoch would continue to increase over the next few years. Many of the GPUs that are available to mine right now would fall off. This would be due to memory limitations. We're about done with 4 gig. We're going to move very quickly to 6 gig. There were a lot of 6 gig cards out there on that. The GTX 1060s, there's a lot of 6 gig cards out there that are going to fall off after 6 gig, which I think is around 2022. And then you have a degradation of the mining performance for most cards. If you benchmark way future epochs, you'll see a decrease in mining hash power. So you have a decreasing effect to the amount of security because of just the growth of that DAG file. That's something we can completely tackle in another episode though. Lastly, and in closing, and then I'll start taking questions, so prep your questions. Lastly, in closing, countless cryptocurrencies have changed their algorithm. So the risk there is very, very limited. This is not even the high-risk event or challenging event. PROGPOW or any other algorithm. Ethereum could go throw a left field and say, we're going to go to X. We're going to go to X16, R, T, Z, whatever. Ethereum would have done, wait a minute, I'm almost done, boys. Ethereum would consider, I totally wrote that wrong, so whatever, I'll just go with it. Bottom line, it's going to allow more people to participate. If we even if it went with PROGPOW or something that wasn't F-hash related, and you can now use 2 gig, 4 gig cards, you would have this huge plethora of availability of cards that are not being used right now. That would then come into the market and allow people to participate. PROGPOW immediately gives that ability for those 2 gig and 4 gig cards to come back. So you actually have more potential. Your force projection of those cards actually can change the dynamics of the network. And the last point I'll just make when I'm just talking through some of your guys' questions. So I have this transcript. I'm going to make this as a Medium post. So if you guys missed it or came late, I will post this out to a Medium post. I will link it on the bottom of this video. I'm going to have a little bit of time for you guys to ask questions because I know some of you guys weren't able to catch up. I see about 140 or 130 watching. Start rolling some of your questions in. I'll try to answer some of your questions and then we'll wrap this one up and make it a quick video. Hopefully this was informative. Again, I think I kind of pitched a couple different angles on this. and actually have, you know, the question out there of, you know, does it keep with eth hash or not? All right, let's see if you guys have some questions. All right, I'll take the first one from Mammoth. What will happen to ETH 1.0 holders after ETH 2.0, and will ETH 2.0 stay membraced algo? So, not reviewing the latest ETH 2.0 standard. The original standard was that Ethereum would go to a hybrid mode first. I don't know if that's still on the take. If it is, it would act a lot like Dash, where you would still have mining and you would have blocks that were proof of stake. So it'd be like 99 blocks would be a proof of work, and then you would have one block proof of stake, which would then be the consortium of essentially block signers. That would be your proof of stake series. And you'd have these checkpoints, and then maybe at some point it would flip to where 99 are proof of stake, 1 is proof of work. Where have you been? I took a break, Jim C. I moved into a new place. I've had a lot going on, and I've done a lot of travel. That travel's actually backing way off right now with the series of stuff that's going on around the world right now. So I am here a lot more, and I plan to do some more stuff. I want to do some testing with the 0.93. Get those miners working and show some new stats and some of the new cards. I have some of the super cards. I haven't done anything with you guys, so I'll be back. Let's see here. People here confirm the A10 has 4 gig DAG capability too. Thanks for the thanks, guys, for hybrid mode is still on. Me and Gnosis would like to get rid of proof of work altogether. Yeah, I mean that's everybody's one. I mean it was on the proof of getting rid of proof of work has always been on the schedule for Ethereum. It's just a matter of when it makes sense, when some of the issues with proof of work or some of the issues with proof of stake have been solved. I mean there's still some pretty large issues out there. I'm still looking at something. You say BBT Todd is converting to Nvidia. No, we've switched over some of the rigs to 5600 XTs and 5700 XTs from Navi, from Nvidia. And then we have a couple rigs that are 1650 Ti's. Logan R, what are your top 3 GPUs would you build a rig around right now? Well, if you can get good deals on like I've seen some really good deals on 1066 gigs. Those are still really good cards. Still super efficient from a power standpoint. If you can find good deals on them, gamers, folks that are kind of getting rid of their 1060s, you know, their first gen 1066 gig cards, and then some 1070 8 gigs are still really good if you can get those. I've seen those as low as $115, $90 cards. Those are really cheap. You can build a really nice 1070 rig like that. If you're wanting to go higher in retail, the RTX 2060s, still real good cards too. And of course the Navis. The 5600 XT I'm doing a lot of testing with right now, and I'll bring that to you guys on Twitch. The 5600 XTs are really nice too. Let's see here. What's happening with proof of stake? I don't have an, I will prepare if you guys want a proof of stake announcement and ETH 2.0 like this if you guys want, and I'll do some research on it and make sure I have all the right content for it. Nice to see you back. It's been good, boys. I missed you guys. Yeah, I'll get the exact date too. I mean, I know there is some tracking out there going on with the DAG file increase of when it's actually going to occur, but you have some situations where GPUs show that they're 4 gig, but then they'll stop operation after like 3.75. How about the RTX 5700. They're really good, but the 5600 gives a very compelling reason to almost go with that more than the 5700 from a cost standpoint. Where's my hug? Right now, notionally, the E3 is showing that it's going to be dead on on April 9th. We'll find out actually if that's occurring. Come on, I know you guys got some more questions. Is there any folks that are counter PROGPOW, and do you have other questions with it? I'd like to answer some of those too. Is there some risk if both ETH and Ravencoin decide to use PROGPOW? Risk is in the standpoint of there will be contentious of which coin would you mine would be about it, but I mean that's kind of the part and parcel of just the space in general, to where some people will mine because of just pure profitability, some people will mine because they're backing a particular coin, and they're going to mine circumstantially if the algorithm is whatever, it doesn't really matter. I mean, think of there's a lot of different algorithms, there's a lot of different currencies right now that use ETH hash in that context. Nemesis says the Z3 will not work on ETC since last Friday. We have an E3 too. I haven't remoted in to try to do any testing with it. I'll talk to BBT Todd about it. The other point, so there's a handful of other things I haven't covered with PROGPOW from a technical nature. Christine Mineham would be probably the best if you want a really deep dive. However, I'll say from an observation and testing point for people that are not familiar with PROGPOW's algorithm and what the changes are to a GPU, the high side of the potential use of power is very high if you don't really throttle certain things. Why I say that is if you have a small farm, if you have a large farm, whatever, if you take it verbatim right off of, you don't do any adjustments and you just kick that algorithm off, there's a high chance you will probably either pop your power supply or you'll pop your fuse box, because unregulated, just turning something on, like if I had a rig of, let's say, GTX 1080s, and the 1080s, let's say a 7-card rig of 1080s. My 7-card rig of 1080s have 1600 watt power supplies. Now we've gotten that power down to around 1000 watts, around 900 to 1000 watts, depending on what we're running. If left unchecked, that thing will exceed 1600 watts. 7 1080s will exceed over 1600 watts all day long if you let them go full tilt. PROGPOW will have an issue if you have that situation. So you'll be very mindful, and that's part of the reason why I want to get back in and start doing testing on 0.93 is to make sure the community understands that you just don't quickly switch it, and you have to down throttle some of your cards and be mindful that you'll burn up your stuff, because it is a very intensive algorithm on the space. And most people built their rigs around the capacity of a certain amount of power. Right, so if you have a 1000 watt power supply and you're using consistently 700, that rig may push 1300 on that 1000 watts. Where I'm really going to. Let's see here. We'll be wrapping it up here pretty soon here, guys. Hopefully this was a good thing. I don't know if there's any more. What I miss? Yeah, you'll be able to rewatch it here soon. All right, guys. I think I'm going to wrap this one up. So. Again, ask questions below, retweet, help me get this shared in some of the communication. I don't mind doing a follow-up, and I do not mind doing a live stream with one of the community folks, anybody that has concern. If you're watching this, you're part of the ETH dev community. I'll have that conversation with you. I mean, we can dive a little deeper on DApp side. We can dive a little deeper on the infrastructure side. I try to use the algorithm or the analogies that I can to help explain kind of the space. If you got a lot of software developers writing SaaS equivalent, which are the dApps in that world, really concerned about the infrastructure. You inherit and you consume that infrastructure, but does it really affect your day-to-day? And that's really the question. So yeah, if you guys, if it works, we'll do another live stream like this. Now I'm working on Twitch. The Twitch has a whole bunch of new features that I'm going to try to integrate into the stream. Most of my live streams that I'm doing testing and stuff are going to come on Twitch. It's just easier to navigate. It's easier to get to your guys' questions on Twitch, and then I'll repackage them for YouTube for quick consumption. You know, the 5-10 minute videos. So thanks again for joining, guys. It's good to be back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed and help me get it out there and shared. Peace.